What is up, Marvel fans? It is Monday. You know what that means. It is time once again for the Marvel Roundtable. On this week's edition, we are going to be diving into Phase 4, which, yes, is now considered to be part of the multiverse saga, as we explore not only the first big Marvel property in the MCU for Phase 4, but also the very first Disney Plus show. So strap in as we explore the broken psyche of Wanda as she becomes the Scarlett Witch, and we're going to break down the entire series of Wandavision right here on the Marvel Roundtable. What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Marvel Roundtable right here on the Horny Goat YouTube channel and, of course, the Horny Goat Podcasting Network, where you listen to us on all your favorite podcasting platforms. This has been quite a week for Marvel, to say the least, which we'll probably touch on a little tiny bit beforehand. But, of course, this is the Marvel Roundtable, where we go in deep dive into every single show and movie in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. You guys know me. I'm Conor, a.k.a. Mr. Marvel 613. I'm joined with me by my friends, my cohorts, my fellow Horny Goat crew members who, for reasons I still don't know, apparently I don't pay them enough to have to drag them through watching every single Marvel property known to existence. Of course, we got the power couple of the Horny Goat channel. We got Heather and JP. What up, fam?
What's up? We are clear of COVID.
Thank God.
God. I can go see my fucking mother, who I've been wanting to see since I got home. Wendy keeps asking, so I'm pretty excited about that. I think that's what we're going to do tomorrow. But
nice.
I'm not going to say too much because I see not one bit of this show. I'm just here to listen and figure out how this ties into anything. And I'll be here for a little bit. I'm not going to be here all night.
It's all good. Just you'll be a note taker. That'll be perfect. How you feeling, Heather?
Well, I'm taking no fucking notes. Are you out of your fucking mind?
Kidding. Trust me. That's my job. How you feeling, Heather?
Tired? Okay.
She got a nap today. I don't want to hear it.
Sometimes I feel like naps do more damage than good.
They
sometimes
fuck you up more, yeah.
Yeah, it's a very weird.
Too long or too short, you're fucked.
Sometimes like you hit that like sweet spot and you're like, oh man, I'm ready to fucking conquer the world. And sometimes you're like, I instantly regret doing it.
I want to die.
Yeah, just put me back in the ground.
I'm gonna die.
And as you can also hear, we got our favorite bear from upstairs, Canadian Basement. What up, Basement?
Oh, there's two things. What's up? Heather has a mushroom cap for a hat.
You can't see it on here on the audio version, but she's got the background on Discord with the mushrooms, and it's perfectly aligned with the top of her head, so it's perfect. JP's kind of got the same thing going, but it's more like the Asian, you know, the straw hat, like Raiden from Mortal Kombat.
Working the rice fields. I'm surprised JP didn't say you don't Wanda.
God damn it!
What? You don't Wanda. You don't Wanda. Come on, you're wearing the fucking clothes.
Oh, God. So this is going to be a doozy. This one's going to be a big one. I want to give a shout out to everybody joining us in the chat. We got Real Cody, we got Tim, we got Alpha, and we got, of course, Federico, our usual cohorts and brethren. Thank you guys all for tuning in for this edition of the Marvel Roundtable. So there is a lot of upfront notes to talk about, not just in terms of, you know, Marvel in general, but like where we're going with this series, and just there's a lot to fucking digest. So for those of you who are listening back into us, we were originally doing this review on July 25th, 2022, which just comes off of the heels of the San Diego Comic-Con, in which Kevin Feige basically laid out everything that was planned out, that is planned out for Marvel for the next fucking 3 to 4 years, which is kind of crazy. We did talk a lot about this on No Bucks Given, so you guys want to go check out No Bucks Given from this past weekend. It kind of breaks down a little bit more as far as what's been going on. So we kind of sort of know where things are going. Obviously, at the time of this recording, Phase 4 is almost done, with Black Panther being the last movie at the end of this year. So just bear with us as far as certain notes and speculations. But that means there's actually a light at the end of the tunnel, which means we're actually going to be caught up with Marvel stuff by the end of the year, if my math is right. So hooray. And if you missed our announcement from the last show, when it comes to the Disney Plus shows, because there are a little longer than the movies. We're going to space that out a little bit longer for about like a 2-week period out. So just keep your eyes and ears peeled for when the next Marvel Roundtable happens. But keep in mind, you might not see it every single week just because, you know, I want my friends to sleep and actually have lives and to not hate me for having to watch all this stuff. But this is obviously a big step because not only are we, you know, coming off of the heels of Avengers Endgame, this is the first Marvel property, not only Phase 4 in 2021, we had no Marvel shit in 2020. And I can't, for the life of me, imagine any particular reason, specifically worldwide, why we had any Marvel content in 2020. I cannot possibly fathom. It was fucking COVID. Yeah, COVID basically halted everything in its dead stop. And so the reason I bring this up isn't because of obviously the delay of the Marvel stuff, but more importantly, this also fucked up the order of things. I'm going to mention this several times when we get to the reviews of some of these earlier Phase 4 things, is that WandaVision, even though WandaVision was the first show that was released, it wasn't supposed to be the first thing that came out. The first thing that was supposed to come out was actually Black Widow and then Falcon and Winter Soldier. WandaVision wasn't supposed to come out until right before Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. Now, I know Heather, you've seen Doctor Strange, right?
No, I haven't. Not
Okay.
yet.
Not the second one.
So you guys are in for a treat. But I know Basement has. And so just kind of some fun little beforehand thoughts as far as like the behind the scenes, like crazy production style of stuff. But that being said, the usual go around, the usual, comeuppance. I'm going to ask you guys 2 questions on this one. The first one, obviously, being generally speaking, what'd you think of the show? And 2, and the reason I bring this up is because I mentioned this before we got into this. I watched this as it was released. I watched it on the week-to-week basis as it was released. And so my question to you 2 guys, when you guys are talking about this, God damn it, Basement, is my question is, was this easier for you guys to absorb and watch all in once? Or thinking about it, like if you tried to watch it week to week, do you think it would have been like, you know, pulling nails?
Getting through the first 8 episodes was like pulling nails for me.
Sorry, clear my throat.
At the end of the day, this is something that probably should not have even been made. Everything that happened in this could have been explained in end credit scenes, and you only needed 2.
Kind of, sort of ish.
Hey.
So how come? My question is, how come this wasn't made into a movie?
How come it wasn't made into a movie?
Yeah.
So,
Right.
if you're looking are you looking for the creative reason or the business reason?
Well, I get the business reason. The creative reason is the only reason I give a shit about.
My guess and my understanding for a creative reason is to set up her character change from Endgame to Multiverse of Madness.
But she could have done that in a 2-hour movie.
Yep.
You don't even need that. You don't even need that.
Just a movie in general. Right?
No. Everything that happened in this series explaining her character change could have been easily explained in 2 end credit scenes at 15 seconds apiece.
Now, I will say that, like, I'm not disagreeing with Heather. I will also...
I am.
I'm
sorry.
I will...
I have to.
No, I was just going to say that I also do give Marvel a little bit of slack in this because it's their first Disney Plus show. It's the first time they're doing anything like this. So it's like, yeah, on one hand, it's definitely not going to be perfect, as we will discuss in a few moments. But yeah, this one didn't quite land it for me. But Basement, quick overall thoughts about this.
See, the one thing I like that we're looking at it, like your perspective when you watched it was week to week. Heather's perspective was she could binge it, but she hadn't seen Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness. And then I've seen Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness, and I could binge it. So we're all coming at it from different angles.
Yeah.
And obviously, like certain things have been spoiled. And for me, I knew most of what was going to happen, at least the big reveals. So it was more looking at like other parts of the show that might be attractive. I don't think Heather, respectively, I don't think they could have. It wouldn't do the character justice to do it in 15 seconds, like small snippets after the fact. There's a bit too much to unravel with the character of Wanda. Could it be done in a movie? I'd say yes. Is it being done as a TV show terrible? I wouldn't say it's not the wrong approach. I would agree that the TV show is too long.
The reason I say that is I probably would have watched it had it been a movie.
Yeah, I mean, if they did the TV series but had the TV series run the same length as like a 2.5-hour movie or a 2-hour movie, I think it would have been a bit more palatable. But they do, at the same time, there's like certain things that they've added that need room to breathe a little bit in this. Now, it's not perfect by any sense, but remember, guys, I was in the chat and I was in the second episode and I'm like, I want to kill myself. But you know what? I watched the whole thing, and I'll say for Phase 4, this is probably the best thing I've seen.
It's the only thing in Phase 4.
I will disagree.
No, I haven't seen the Eternals.
Oh, okay, no, that's right. You've seen Doctor Strange, but go ahead.
I've seen Doctor Strange. I've seen Falcon and Winter Soldier, and there's one other thing I've seen that I can't remember right now.
Well, there's only Black Widow.
Black Widow, yeah, I've seen that too. So this I think is actually a bit better than those.
So I guess looking at it from this, so like I said, I've seen it week to week. I know that Heather, you're not necessarily the biggest fan of this one, but do you think it was easier to absorb as a binge? I mean, I think I mentioned this before, like in previous discussions. Like, I feel like you would have just like quit after the second week.
Fucking second episode with how this was handled. If watching it week to week, I would have said, "Fuck you, Marvel. I am done."
100%. I'm with you, Heather, on that one. But it's not that digestible as a binge either. It's in a weird spot where there's no real right way to watch this. I mean, Heather probably had the best suggestion, watching it 3 episodes at a time and giving it like time, between.
As someone who watched it week to week as it was released, I will tell you that it is, and this is just my opinion, a huge step up as far as the enjoyment level in one sitting. And I think because of the mystery aspect of it, and and you're trying to figure shit out, and you're like, what the fuck is going on? Because we're just going right into, the black and white sitcoms, but you can tell there's a little something off. It's just like, Kim, the fuck, like you were waiting for like shit to get like some traction going, and I think by the third week, we finally, the third week is like, oh, okay, it's a little different now. And then the fourth week, it's like, oh, finally, now we're, but we'll get there. We'll get into each episode. So
the thing is, for me, like, without having that, I was able to look at it like more from. I kind of know the beats the story is going to go through to an extent. I don't know when they're going to happen, but I know enough of the spoilers to kind of not be surprised by pretty much anything the show's going to throw at me. But then I get to look at the show as like a whole and like some of the like themes that they're bringing up and what they're working with, more than have to like rely on shock value. So see it for like what it was actually written as versus the way that a lot of shows be like, you're coming back because we showed you a little snippet of something and everybody in the world can speculate on it.
Yeah, which I will, towards the end, I'll mention there's a big thing on the internet that a lot of people were like, certain hints and things were pointing to, and then when it didn't live up to that, a lot of people were disappointed, which, I mean, shit, that happens in wrestling when we self-book things, and, But
that's the problem of week-to-week watching for everything, and it really hurts when certain things have like a huge following. It can make them or destroy them.
Yep. And at this point, Marvel's obviously a life of its own. But anyway, so let's dive into it. Let's talk about so bear with us, folks, because this is obviously my first time of us reviewing like any series or a season of a series. So, when it comes to the movies, obviously I'm kind of going like scene by scene. So in this one, we're kind of going to go like generally episode by episode, especially where the first 3 kind of are unique in their own right. So No context whatsoever. No,
Hey
like,
guys.
all right.
Hey, JP.
Night, JP.
We're gonna do. You said episode to episode, but we're gonna finish off 1 and then move to 2. I know you mentioned 3. We're not gonna do all 3 at once, right? 'Cause that's a
Yeah,
lot.
we're gonna try and like just takeaways from each episode because I mean we're still trying to figure this kind of part of the review out because there is some episodes that are obviously heavier more than others and there's more plot points than others, especially with this one. So just bear with us if we're a little all over the place and we're not the normally super structured. This thing's not very structured at anyone, so that's fine.
Perfect.
First episode, filmed before a live studio audience. So newlywed couple Wanda Maximoff and Vision move into the new town of Westview in a black and white 1950s setting. They attempt to blend despite Vision being, of course, an android and Maximoff having telekinesis and reality warping abilities. One day they notice that there's a heart drawn on their calendar but cannot remember what the occasion is. While Vision goes to his job at computational services, Maximoff decides that the heart represents their anniversary. Their neighbor Agnes introduces herself to Wanda Maximoff to help and helps her prepare to celebrate that night. Vision amazes his co-workers with his super speed but is unsure what his company actually does. He is reminded that the heart represents plans for him and Maximoff to host his boss, Mr. Hart, and his wife for dinner. Maximoff and Vision struggle to hide their abilities while making a last-minute dinner. While interrogating Maximoff and Vision, Mr. Hart chokes on his food, and Vision uses his ability to save him in an awkward moment of like bizarre silence. All this takes place in the fictional sitcom Wandavision, which we see at the end of the episode someone is watching on a television. Now, there's a love and hate for this, for me personally. On one hand, there is no fucking context or setup before this. It's like, boom, we're right into the thick of things. And I understand, like, Heather, I can already see her shaking her head. I can understand the frustration on that part. But the other part, I think that the reason this series is so divisive is because of that. It's that it's going in such a radically different direction. And storytelling is like, well, fuck, hold the fuck on. The last time we saw her, she was talking to Hawkeye at the end of Endgame about, like, you know, Black Widow and Vision being dead. Vision's dead. Last time I'm pretty sure Vision fucking died. And then
And she was fine with it.
And now we're in we're in Dick Van Dyke, which, by the way, fun fact, not only was this actually filmed in front of a live studio audience legitimately, but this and the second episode were both had a special executive producer, Dick Van Dyke.
God, that man is just doing one-arm push-up still, I think. Fucking motherfucker.
So I don't really know how to feel about this first episode because it's just kind of taking in the fact that, like, things are different. But the one thing I will say that I kind of did, like, got me intrigued was that choking scene. Because you can tell, like, something. Do you guys ever see the movie Pleasantville?
Yep.
Yeah.
That's exactly the vibes I got from it.
Yes. And so that I'm like, all right, you have my intrigue here. Really, that's kind of the big set, is that Vision is still himself. Vision is still the android. He still has the power. Wanda still has her powers. So it's not like they're different people. It's just the environment is different. Plus, we also did a commercial, by the way, for Stark Industries Toastmates 2000, which we'll talk more about the commercials as we get through each episode. Plus, you had the
this.
What's that?
That's one of the things that fucked me up with this was those fucking commercials.
And then, of course, seeing that this is taking place on a show and then somebody's watching it. And I remember seeing the logo of the circle with the sword with it. I knew exactly what that was, but I'm sure a lot of people were still like, oh, there's a government agency watching this on a TV. Like, what the fuck is happening?
Okay. Here's the thing. This, like, it's this. I wish they kept to the original timeline of what they were releasing things, because this should not be the first product after Endgame. After, I guess, after Endgame, right? This is the first.
This was legitimately the very first Marvel Studios project that was released after Spider-Man: Far From Home, but this was
So the reason I say that is because the expectations are so high, and this is such like a left field project, very not reminiscent of a lot of the things Marvel has ever done, and I think a lot of initial hate for this show comes from that. Like again, I'm coming from a standpoint. I didn't see this at all until 2 days ago or 3 days ago. So like I didn't have to look at it saying, "Oh my god, it's a letdown" or whatever from that. But I do feel like a lot of people felt that way. Two, I hate sitcoms.
Just real quick before you get too deep into this, just to again kind of the only reason I re-emphasize this point is I feel like part of this is somewhat of a factor when reviewing some of these movies / shows. The order of original release was supposed to be Black Widow, Falcon and Winter Soldier, Eternals, Shang-Chi, then WandaVision, then Doctor Strange and Multiverse of Madness.
Now that being said, like though I just said it shouldn't have been first, and I don't like sitcoms, I've gotta applaud them for doing something different for once.
I mean,
Like
it's
there's
Marvel. At
too
this
much.
point, they
But-
can do whatever the
but
fuck they
there's-
want.
Yeah, but they don't normally. They've released the same fucking movie over and over and over again. So I at least have to give them applause for that.
Yeah.
I kept asking myself the whole time watching this show, would I have preferred it the way that they did it, or would I have preferred it where she was just in a town and eventually things became weirder and weirder in current day that she was in? And I have to think like a Twin Peaks type thing. I'd have to think I might probably prefer the weird town over the retro changing and evolution of things. And
Knowing where we go with the end of the series, I do have to tip my hat a little bit for at least trying to go.
it's very like last minute. This is why this is happening, and in a very small way. Which I mean, I get and I accept. I still would have liked this. The thing for me, I would have loved to see like a weird town shit go on for way longer than what they did.
Yeah.
But in this first episode, like
right balance.
I personally don't. Like it's like, oh, one weird thing, and guess what? Here's the truth.
Well,
of what's
there's
happening.
more in the next one, but we'll get. But anyway.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we'll get there. I'm getting ahead of myself.
Yeah.
But the first episode, it's
Dick Van Dyke meets I Love Lucy, like just boom, right together.
And I didn't watch. The other thing I want to touch on. Who is this for? Because the fans of Dick Van Dyke and I Love Lucy are like 80 years old.
I like those shows, but anyway, that's me being. I've
how
also
often
watched
do you
wrestling in the 1950s, so I mean, I'm a weird cat. So
that's what I'm saying. Like, who's it for?
I think I think they were just trying to be a vastly different thing, and I think that's really where they were trying to. I think that's it. I think that they were trying to, because they could have released Falcon and Winter Soldier first, but they didn't, because Falcon and Winter Soldier was not too long after WandaVision. But I think that I think they were trying to, and this is just me theorizing, I think they were trying to take advantage of people be like, oh, it's the first big Marvel thing. And not knowing, I mean, hell, the trailers showed barely anything. They basically showed just the first three episodes and maybe a little bit of the last episode. But you really didn't know everything that was going on, which is both a positive and it's a plus and a minus, as like I said, Heather, obviously not a huge fan of the series. But let me ask you this, Heather, just to pivot to you real quick. Knowing where it goes, does that make up for it at all? I guess the question is, do the ends justify the means?
Yes and no. And
Yes.
the way it was done going through the different decades, no.
Okay.
If they had left it as more she had taken over this town and kept it current day, the ends would have justified the means.
Let me throw this hypothetical to you, and I don't want to take up too much of the time on one specific episode, but let me throw this out to you. Let's say everything stayed the way it was, but let's say like right before we see the opening credits to WandaVision, this first episode, like the opening black and white scene, we see this burst of the red energy, and then it's that.
Be done with that.
Yeah.
Like the point I'm making is that it would be a subtle but more
I'd also be down with. Actually, I would prefer them not do that.
Well, I was gonna say it's a subtle hint to what really happened versus just going in blind, essentially. You know what I mean?
I'd prefer to go in blind, personally. I think it would have held more weight when the reveal does happen. Heather?
It's a tough call for me. But sorry, Heather.
It's difficult because, yes, we know the red burst would be her energy, her powers.
Right.
Yeah, it's too much of a giveaway in my mind.
Yeah, exactly. But it's still the issue of we have the end of Endgame where she's standing at the end of the lake telling Hawkeye, they're watching us, they know we're okay, and we know they're okay. To going into this psycho mode.
But
almost immediately.
Yep.
I would say no. There's reasons for it, and I mean, how many times have you heard somebody say they're okay when they're not? But what I was gonna say for this, and I did read that, like, I think it was, well, I might be wrong on this completely, but I did read this that it was Feige's idea to do the like sitcom thing, and I feel like at some point in time they had the gimmick of the sitcoms, and they tried to make the series work for it. And I'm with you when saying it should have been modern day, and I would have loved it to be like, as the show goes on, there's certain things that stand out as like, what the fuck? What is this weird shit happening? But spread out a bit further, because they kind of blow their load too early in the show. Other than that, the first episode, I guess, is fine. It's just not my cup of tea, and this had me questioning whose cup of tea is it? Because it's a Marvel movie with 1950s and 60s references.
I think they were trying to go so far left in terms of like you just said, it's like, you know, one of the things that we appreciated at least was that was different, and so I think that people had a certain expectation of it, and then just go like this is radically different from anything else they've done. Even to the point where
it hurts the show more than anything. And like watching the show, I think that the sitcom stuff, though it makes it unique, it hurts it as an entity more than it helps it as an entity, because it makes so many fucking questions.
Yeah,
I know they give like a very small answer to a massive question.
Now, the other thing to note is just for
it's the dialogue of the whole sitcom portion of this. It's just like, it is so bad.
It's so boring for me, man.
It's accurate. It's accurate to the shows.
Exactly. That's why we don't watch 1960 shows today.
Speak for yourself.
I mean, very few people watch fucking I Love Lucy today. And if that's the audience they're going for,
now let me go outside and play with my, the Amish wheels that they kick with a stick. Let me go play with that outside.
My wood-made dreidel in the corner.
I have a huge homemade dreidel collection. No, I mean it's. I see both points, because on one hand it is kind of like it is pulling teeth on one side of it, especially watching it week to week. But I do have to applaud them for at least trying something different from the norm of the standard Marvel MO stuff. I see Bobbit has joined us as well. Bobbit, you got any initial thoughts on the first like opening? Like, what you thought, like the initial thoughts of WandaVision when you first started watching it?
Well, at first I was like, what in the fuck is going on? Because I kept saying, like, wait a minute, is it Vision dead? Like, what the fuck's going on here? And like, as he, went through the episodes, he kind of explained everything. And I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense. Because I like the little breadcrumbs that they gave us, as a hint of what's actually going on. And this whole sitcom thing, I agree with y'all. I didn't like it either, but until they explain her backstory, then I kind of got it.
In episode 8.
The thing is, we'll get there. I don't want to talk too much about the first episode.
All right, let's move on to the second episode. And the other thing I did want to I'll talk about when we get to the end. So episode 2 was Don't Touch That Dial. We've now jumped ahead to the 1960s. With 1960s setting, Maximoff and Vision hear strange noises outside the house. Now things are kind of in more of the I Dream of Jeannie kind of vibe. In fact, the opening sequence is almost very accurate as far as the I Dream of Jeannie or Bewitched similar sitcoms. They prepare their magic act for neighborhood talent show. Maximoff and Agnes spend the day with the day show's planning committee, led by Dottie, and Vision attends a neighborhood watch meeting where he accidentally swallows some chewing gum. Meanwhile, Maximoff befriends another neighbor named Geraldine and notices some more strange things, including a yellow and red toy helicopter that remains colored in their black and white world. And while talking to one of the neighbors, Dottie, she notices that a voice on the radio that seems to be speaking to her, that trying to speak out and trying to communicate with her, as well as a red blood stain on her dress after accidentally getting Dottie's hand cut from glass. Thanks to the gum cottonism internal mechanisms, Vision appears to be intoxicated at the talent show. Fucking hilarious. I don't give a shit what anybody says. And publicly reveals his abilities, but Maximoff uses her own abilities to make this look like simple magic tricks and fixes Vision by removing the gum. They return home and Maximoff becomes instantly visibly pregnant, and when they see a strange beekeeper emerging from a manhole on the street, Maximoff seemingly resets their reality to right before the figure appears, and at the end of the episode, the settings change color to show full color as we're now moving into the 1970s. So
many questions for this one.
What's that?
I mean, I have so many questions for this episode, to be
Fire away.
So I guess first of all, I came to the realization about 20 minutes in that I'm like, you know what, fuck, I'm just gonna accept the sitcom thing. It's not going anywhere. So let me just enjoy it, I guess, for what it is.
Yeah.
It gets a bit more enjoyable as time goes on because it gets more relatable to me. I wasn't alive in the fucking 60s, and I didn't watch the 60s show, so it means nothing. But I know enough. I'm echoing.
Oh, sorry, it's probably me. 1 second. Fix that.
Other than that, I would say like there's a bunch of like the gum thing. It leads to a very a funny gag, but it's like why give him a mouth and teeth if he can't eat anything? Like fucking robot.
It's the simplistic nature of like one thing when I was reading into this at the time was with Dick Van Dyke being executive producer.
I know they wanted to mirror. They wanted to mirror what like the funny gags of the shows that.
Yeah, they wanted to, and the biggest piece of advice they gave him was to make simple, realistic storylines. Of course, with fucking a cosmic level being and an android who's supposed to be dead. Nailed it.
I think it was just more in line with like they're presenting. This is being presented as a 1960s thing. You're not gonna see like an in-depth look at his body. It's gonna be gears and fucking motors and shit like that make him work. And that's a very small nitpick. The pregnancy thing, and this goes on to like the Doctor Strange movie. What the fuck? It never makes sense. It still doesn't make sense to me.
Well, no. I'll explain I'll explain in a second. But I'll throw it to Bobbit this time for the second episode. I mean, Bobbit, we're in the second episode now. We're in the 60s, and a lot of craziness happening. Would you same thoughts from the first episode or anything different?
Just exactly the same thoughts as the first episode. I was, I thought it was weird that this so far in the series, everything has been black and white. All of a sudden, we see color. I'm like, okay, this is something important, and it just it's a pretty good episode. Like the beekeeper thing threw me off, and I wasn't like you, Connor. I didn't recognize that logo on the back until obviously it got explained. But it was I thought it was a pretty good episode. Like I'm not huge into the 60s shit, but
right.
It was all right.
All right. Heather, still on the same track, right? I know you said that like the second episode, you're like, oh my god, don't tell me this is all of this.
I was fucking dying trying to make it through this episode. I mean, come on, he's a fucking robot. Swallows gum.
Can I just re-emphasize that I really appreciate you guys doing this roundtable for me?
He swallows gum.
I enjoy it.
Like he's drunk, and then she has to sit there and fumble her way around through this magic act. And then the meeting with Dottie, it's just like, oh god, no.
So
no.
To me, this is when you start to play. Not you specifically, Heather, but I mean, like the audience member, whoever's watching it. This is when we start to play detective, because this is where we're starting to see similarities and things that just more things are off in this episode than there were in the first one. The first one seemed relatively seamless, right? with the exception of course, Mr. Hart choking, and there was just like this dead silent moment, and just things were very awkward. Even with like the somebody watching it on TV and stuff, it was relatively seen. But now there seems to be more disruptions in terms of the radio with somebody trying to contact Wanda, the reset with the beekeeper, the helicopter crashing. Things are a little bit definitely more off. In fact, there was a moment when Dottie's like, "Why are you here?" And she's like, "I don't mean to hurt you." And he goes, "I don't believe you." And then all of a sudden, like, snapped back out of it. Now the pregnancy thing.
But the helicopter that like ends up crashing in her fucking front lawn or whatever it is. Like
Yeah.
the drone turned helicopter.
Yeah.
At first, I was like, okay, so anything that gets sent in is if it's modern, it turns color. Is that correct?
I mean,
because I don't think it makes sense no more.
there's a lot of loopholes as far as specifics when it comes to what we get to the end part. But
I mean,
think
visually, I loved it.
yeah, I think
but
it's more
I
just
was
a visual
trying to,
representation of like not everything's as seamless and perfect as what we're watching right now.
I think it was like to highlight that, highlight that fact to the audience that this doesn't belong here and kind of lead them, which I loved if it had a bit more explanation as to like when color was shown until that, because eventually like the whole place turns color. But like I would have loved to see the black and white go on a little bit longer and have the color have a meaning, more symbolic meaning. This is why I like the weird town thing. I love. I just don't think they explored it to its extent.
No, they did not.
Now, two things to note. The first is we get another weird commercial. Now, when you guys saw the commercial for Stark Industry Toast Made, and by the way, I forgot to also mention that when they actually turn the toaster on, I don't know if you guys caught this, but it's the arc reactor noise.
Yes.
Shit, I did not catch that.
Yep. So when
And the awkward silence of just standing there.
Yep.
I mean, it sounded like a fucking it sounded pretty fucking loud for a toaster. But
did you guys have your eyebrows raised? You're like, okay, like this is weird.
Well, I mean, throughout the
I thought they were both weird.
So in the second episode, we got a commercial for Strucker watches.
Hydra Incorporated.
If you look closely on the watch, you can see the Hydra logo, very clear, and of course, Strucker being referred to Baron von Strucker from Age of Ultron, who was the lead scientist at Hydra, who is like, "We're never going to surrender. I'm going to surrender." So
I actually really like the ads, and
the ads are actually kind of. I think the ads are a fun little like.
I mean, if I'm buying into them going through sitcoms, I guess I had to, or else I would have been like, I can't watch the show. I had to get to the point where I'm like, I'm gonna accept it, and then I kind of liked what it was presenting.
I think the what do you call it? The commercials were more just like for like super nerds like me to be like, oh, Easter egg.
I want to point out that fucking Tony that Stark toaster can somehow make a meatloaf. I don't know how.
Oh, yeah. He's making like weird, ridiculous shit. That's right. But I mean, hey, if you have a fucking arc reactor in your toaster.
Do you remember fucking Stark's suit from Endgame?
Mm.
That shit could have done anything.
I mean, it did make meatloaf at the end of Endgame.
God. I will do it.
That joke was in poor taste, just like Tony's.
Yeah, I know.
Anyway, and the pregnancy thing. So this is when people started to get a little fucking crazy with it, because a lot of people were assuming that, they had a little bit of inclination as far as where it might be going. But with the pregnancy, a lot of people were assuming that Marvel was doing their own version of a very popular comic known as House of M, which I'm not sure if you guys have heard about this, but basically in House of M, Wanda becomes such a powerful being that she basically creates her own pocket reality where she kills literally half of all the Marvel heroes. And in that world, she has 2 children. So it started to seem to fit like, oh, maybe they're doing their own version of House of M, which they sort of ish do.
People are also screaming Mephisto, so
that we'll get.
Oh
to
my
that
god!
We'll get.
Oh my god! I read the showrunner didn't even know who that was, or the writer for the show.
Yep,
was
we'll
like,
get
when
to
I
that in a
asked,
minute.
I didn't know who that was. I'm like,
Yeah, well,
how are you writing for a property you know nothing about? Welcome to WWE Raw.
seriously, yeah. Who's the champion? Anyway, episode 3 is now in color. So now we're in the 1970s setting, completely in color. Dr. Nielsen says that Wanda Maximoff is now 4 months pregnant, but everything is fine before leaving for an intended holiday with his wife. While Vision sees Nielsen out, he sees his neighbor Herb unknowingly cut through their wall, almost like not really, kind of almost out of it completely. Maximoff and Vision paint a nursery while debating what to name their child before Maximoff's pregnancy elevates immediately to 6 months. When she begins her contractions, her abilities begin to move things in the house and eventually shut down the entire town's power. Geraldine arrives and helps Maximoff deliver not 1, but 2 baby boys, Billy and Tommy. Vision catches Agnes and Herb gossiping outside, and they're talking about Geraldine, who apparently has just arrived in town and does not have a home or a family. Inside, Wanda interrogates Geraldine after Geraldine reveals that she knows that Ultron killed Maximoff's twin brother Pietro. Maximoff notices that Geraldine is wearing a pendant with a sword emblem on it, much similar to what she saw with the helicopter that landed in the last episode. When Vision returns back inside, Geraldine is gone, but outside of Westview, Geraldine emerges through a wall of static and surrounded by agents of S.W.O.R.D. So, holy shit.
Yes, holy shit. I actually love the idea of because she's going. This is where the pregnancy is fucked up for me, because I have to assume she's going through real pregnancy, even though she's not.
Fuck a robot. How the fuck did she get pregnant?
When a robot and a woman love each other very much, she puts new batteries in him, and that's a.
Well, she just made herself pregnant to birth unreal people, but the idea of if it was a real pregnancy and all the she's trying to uphold this fucking mirage, things would go haywire, and that's kind of I like that play when they played on that in the episode where it's I think my water broke and everything rains and the whole house fucking floods and shit like that. It's a neat way to show that she's actually controlling the universe before you know it. I dislike massively that Rambo is our point of contact with the outside world.
Well, yeah.
She doesn't really know it though, because when she touched the wall, it sucked her in and then wiped her memory.
I just feel like on a storytelling basis, especially with where this show goes, and it kind of does one of its leads a bit dirty. There's something that we get to later on, and I kind of have to talk about it now because it's in relation to this, where Vision is forcing himself out of the barrier and is falling apart. That is much more. There's much more weight to that as being the audience's point of contact with the outside than Monica Rambeau being thrown out of the fucking square octagon or whatever the fuck it is.
I think that the order of everything is so all over the place, but they're trying to make it as mystery as much as possible and piece things together as much as possible.
They give the mystery away too early for me, because as soon as the mystery is given away, the sitcom shit means absolutely nothing and goes on for way too long.
I think they give away a good chunk of it where the sitcom stuff doesn't mean as much, but you still don't know absolutely everything until literally the end of the 8th episode. Which
I mean, I personally feel like the better reveal would be the Vision reveal, because he gets sucked back. He's really the guy that starts to notice shit. And he instead of because Rambo doesn't it. For as much as because her character is fucking bullshit at the end of this.
I didn't mind Maria as much. I'll get to a part about her later on. I didn't mind.
I agree with that part for sure.
I don't mind Maria as much, to be honest with you, as the initial, because it's. I just didn't mind it as much, to be honest with you, because I didn't see her as like an integral focal part, other than like you have this question mark of a mystery of what the hell's going on. You have to sort of establish good and bad, you know what I mean? And so it's like where Wanda, let's face it, Wanda's in the gray as far as
No, Wanda is terrible in this whole series. She is literally terrible. I mean, the way I looked at this is I love a lot of the elements that they have going on here. I just hate the order in which they present them. Like I said before, I would have loved this mystery to go on longer, because as soon as you take it away, the show loses a lot of value. It loses like half of what it's dedicated to, which is the mystery and is the sitcom shit, goes out the window in episode 4. For me, that's what happened for sure. And I know there's a little bit of like, oh, who's doing this and who's doing that, but it's less interesting. It just becomes less interesting because of this. If it was Vision, he starts to fall apart. All we do as an audience is we see the outside world of outside where he's going, and then he gets sucked back in, and that's it. We don't get this larger explanation.
The only way he can live is inside of that bubble.
But wouldn't it be like more impactful to the audience watching to see that before they saw Monica Rambeau get thrown out, or Maria Rambeau, whatever the fuck her name is, get thrown out, and then her backstory, and then everything that's happening on the outside? I hated a lot of the shit that was happening on the outside. It was waste.
I don't think so, because with that, this gives us the first taste of the chaos of everybody coming back from the blip.
So,
I get that, but that could have happened at episode 6 or 7.
we'll get to that
and
part.
still have the same and still had the same weight.
So Heather, I know you said that episode 2 you were done. Did episode 3 change anything for you?
Not really. I mean, it made it better because of the fact that, yes, now we're in color and we're getting more of the outside world. But again, I was still struggling to watch this. I mean, they're arguing over the more American name of Billy or Tommy. It's like, do you not realize that Billy is short for William, and therefore it is the most fucking American name you could fucking think of?
Right.
Oh my God.
I mean, it's just like at a certain point, I gave up about those details because there's no point. And I mean, I don't really care about what they call them.
It's comic accurate.
Right?
It's
all
accurate.
because they turn into like Young Justice or some shit.
Wicked and Speed. Yeah, we'll get there. I didn't mind it too much, especially where if I don't know if this is just me, but I noticed there was more off-putting moments per episode.
Yeah.
So now there's so to me it was either going to be you're going to knock down the wall and we're going to see what is actually happening or get a better idea, generally speaking, of what's actually happening, and or everything's going to collapse in the next step, or most things are going to collapse in the next episode, which not quite, but we'll get to that point. We'll get to that point. And the commercial we saw for this one was Hydra Soak bath powder, which of course is what the mind control stuff that Hydra has been known to use in the past.
Before you go on, I do want to say, like, I actually I'm looking at it retrospectively from the entire series and where I would have placed things.
Yep.
I enjoyed this episode. I did. I like I said before, I like the use of how they showed the pregnancy and everything, and it like very much hinting to the world that she created. And I did enjoy her one-on-one with Rambeau, where she's like, she kind of shows her true colors there, because we don't get to see it, but like when she turns around and she's like, "What did you see that? How do you know about this?" And it's like, okay,
You know about Ultron, yeah.
That's a nice little thing. Bobbit was about to say something a long time ago, and he was caught up by me.
Mm-hmm.
No, I was just laughing at that commercial. But when that the chick mentioned Pietro, I'm like, how the fuck does she know that? Because obviously I'm stupid and I didn't catch on until after it was explained. I was like, how the fuck does she know that?
We'll get there. So episode 4 pivots completely into a different direction. Actually starts to catch us up on actually what's really going, or at least somewhat going on in the outside world. So we find out that, of course, Geraldine is none other than Captain Monica Rambeau, an agent of S.W.O.R.D., returning to her life following the blip to find her mother Maria has unfortunately died of cancer. Before we get into any further of this, I gotta say that this was one of, creatively And as far as getting into a character or something like this, I kind of really liked that. I hate saying that, like,
Right.
oh, I woke up to find my mother dead. But the point of it is that, and I've talked about this numerous times with you guys before, effects of the blip very much intrigue me. And I think that this was a interesting little tidbit because, yeah, we get to finally see a little bit of like, oh shit, this is what happens when people came back, and fuck working in that hospital at that point. Can you imagine?
You know what? It's literally the most intriguing thing about Marvel after Endgame, in my honest opinion. And they've tapped it a little bit. They tapped it here, and I loved it. I mean, obviously, like I joked around. It's like, what if people like come back and they're occupying the same space as somebody else? What happens then? Shut up, move on. Is what
No, but
happens.
it had some weight to it that I kind of appreciated, personally speaking.
Yeah, I absolutely love this scene. And you and me have talked, and everybody here has talked about the blip and how exciting it could be if it was incorporated. This is that for me. It gave me a good dose of what I needed to continue. This was a struggle. This was like the show was a struggle. I actually really liked the show. It's just like, man, I struggled
Getting
with
to
it.
this point was the fight, though. That's the problem.
Yeah. So 3 weeks later from this, Maria, of course, returns to work and is sent by acting director Tyler Hayward to help FBI agent and everyone's favorite from Ant-Man and the Wasp, Agent Jimmy Woo, who has mastered the card trick.
I love Jimmy Woo.
I cannot stress my love for Jimmy Woo in this series. He is up there as far as my top, like, probably top 3 favorite characters of this entire show. I'm not kidding.
He's such a like caricature too. He doesn't even try to act like a normal person, and I'm like, fuck yes.
Beautiful, like goofy, stupid innocence to him. It's great. It's great.
Yeah.
I love it. So anyway, he's trying to. Maria's partnered up with Jimmy Woo to start with a missing persons case in Westview. They discover a hexagonal static CMBR field surrounding the town, which Rambeau is accidentally pulled into. Within 24 hours, SWORD establishes a base around the town and sends in drones and an agent in to investigate. Of course, we are also reunited with Dr. Darcy Lewis from the Thor movies. She studies the phenomena and discovers broadcast signals for the sitcom WandaVision, hence how they're able to see the first 3 episodes. They use this to observe the events inside the town, learning that the real residents have been cast in the sitcom, and seeing Rambeau appear as Geraldine. Lewis and Wu unsuccessfully attempt to use the radio to contact Maximoff. When Rambeau mentions Ultron, Maximoff casts her out of the town. Maximoff then temporarily rebuilds everything and of course looks over and sees Vision appear as he did when he died before settling back into her sitcom life with him. I'm going to take a guess, Heather, and say this is the part of the series where things kind of turn around a little bit for you.
Yes.
Yeah, I figured. Because now we're getting a bit of a bigger picture.
Because the scene where you have the neighbor sitting there trying to cut the wall with the hedge clippers, and it seems like you cut a little too far. And the doctor's saying nobody really ever escapes this town.
Yeah,
was his name Herbert or Sherbert?
Yeah.
Can't remember his name, but it's Herbert or Sherbert.
This is where it started picking up for me, but I still wasn't, like, okay, I can continue watching this just yet.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, as it is, like, okay, so like instead of the way I would reorder this later on, I actually, like, as soon as I bought into the idea of what they were telling me, I kind of enjoyed everything else that came after it. And as soon as I bought into like the sitcom thing, I love the fact that like they throw something in there and it gets to the era of where they are, and they kind of use that trope or that trick, I guess, or trope very well. As they
card
move
trick
on.
that Jimmy Woo used.
Jimmy Woo just fucking makes me wet. I'm just not gonna lie.
He just puts a smile on my face every time he's on the camera. And it just
the one thing, and I think, are we at the point where I can't remember? Is this where Kat Dennings shows up or no?
Yes.
Yeah.
What is her character's name?
Dr. Darcy Lewis.
Okay, good, because I called her Kat Dennings throughout this entire thing.
Understandable.
Like I said before, I like the stuff on the outside. It's if it wasn't for Jimmy Woo, It wouldn't intrigue me as much. Kat Dennings, like I've said this before, I didn't really like care for her in Thor, and I don't really care for her in this. I get what she's there for, and some people, she's your cup of tea. She doesn't do it for me. I don't find her funny. I don't find her anything. But
there's a couple of little like clever quips, and shout out to Frank from the Harsh Truth podcast, also joining us in the chat. What up, Frank? I didn't mind her too much. I mean, I liked her as a bit of a. I feel like you had the three people with Darcy, Maria, and Jimmy Woo, right? Darcy was the extreme sarcastic one. Jimmy was the very literal one, and Maria was kind of in the middle.
Yeah.
So there was
it was a
good balancing act with the three of them.
The most obvious bad guy in the world that was just bad.
Yeah, I mean, with Tyler Hayward, you knew he was a dick from day one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like, the right person got the job, except you're a piece of shit. And what realm was you the right person? She was around this guy beforehand, and unless he just turned to shit in 5 years, which is possible.
Tyler, like, I'm just kidding.
What's wrong with that?
But I don't know about you, but I did kind of. I also did like the idea of, again, little shit that they plant things for. This one specifically, when like Wanda, rebuilds the wall after shooting Maria out, and then she looks over and Vision's like gray with the head crushed in, and she's
I love that. That happens a couple times in this. That's fucking incredible. To be honest, I mean, I want to say this right now because it'll probably be said later a lot. The two leads, which is Paul Bettany and Elizabeth Olsen is her full name. They're actually very fucking good in this. They are excellent, actually, in this show.
Yeah, I specifically, I mean, not that I'm like trying to undermine anybody else, but for me personally, Paul Bettany fucking crushed this.
Paul Bettany does kill it. I mean, Elizabeth Olsen, she has a bit less to work with, I guess, in terms of like
actors and actresses in this show. To be honest with you.
I feel like Paul Bettany has the most to work with until the last couple episodes where he just fucking vanishes. But before that, he's killing it, and even at the end, he kills it, and at parts he kills it. They're both excellent, and I fucking Catherine Heat. What's her fucking name? Yeah, she is her the way she is in other things, but she's great.
She's a treasure.
The character she was playing until it's revealed as to who she actually is fits for what they needed.
I mean, she's casted perfectly.
Yes.
Yep. Bobbit, what did you think of this fourth episode? Now that we're kind of like getting an idea of like Sword and where things are headed from there.
Well, this was the okay. Okay. Now I know what's going on. Moment for me in this show, because, like I said, up until this point, I had no idea what the fuck was going on, and then after everything got explained, I'm like, oh, okay. That's when I started liking the show a lot more, because, now I can continue, knowing what's actually behind the scenes.
Right. By the way, I also... Oh, sorry, go ahead, Bobby.
Oh, no, I was done.
Oh, okay. I also wanted to just point out that I didn't realize this until I was looking in the notes and getting everything together, and I forgot about this when I was watching it. I do like the idea that the episodes are named after, like, sitcom staples or, like, TV show staples. Just cute little side note I personally enjoyed. But we're now on to episode 5. On a very special episode. So this is where we're actually starting to see a split between what's going on in the Wandavision reality and also what's going on with Sword and the agents on the outside. So it's kind of splitting the difference. So it's now set in the early in 1980s, early 1990s settings where Maximoff and Vision are struggling to keep Billy and Tommy from crying. Agnes comes in and offers to help look after the boys, but Vision questions her behavior. He and Maximoff are interrupted when Billy and Tommy suddenly randomly age themselves up to 5 years old. When a dog suddenly appears at their house, the boys ask to keep it, and Agnes suggests the name it Sparky. Maximoff almost reveals her abilities to Agnes concerning Vision, while the boys boys age up again to 10 years old. Meanwhile, at work, Vision reads an email from Sword that reveals the situation in Westview. He then uses his abilities to break through to a real Westview resident and learns that Maximoff is controlling the town. Sword sends in a drone from the 1980s into Westview, which of course causes Sparky to run off, but Hayward orders the drone to be used to kill Wanda, but she actually emerges from the barrier with it and warns Hayward to leave her alone. Agnes finds Sparky, of course, dead, and then Vision confronts Maximoff about her actions, but they are interrupted when Pietro arrives, and while watching the broadcast, Darcy notes that Pietro has now been recasted.
That was my favorite line of that whole episode. She
that?
recast Pietro?
Yep. This episode, out of the entire series, was several jaw-dropping moments for me. Obviously. This also not only like continued stuff on, I thought we were gonna get more answers, but fuck, I got more questions. And the biggest two things that were kind of like whoa moments for me was, one, Wanda actually leaving the Hex, or the Westview anomaly as they're calling it, which really just paints her to be the villain. And then on top of that,
there's a line that happens when she leaves. She's like, "I'm not the one with the guns." I'm like, what?
And you
You don't
just
have fucking guns.
First of all, you have 1,000+ people enslaved in a fucking hexagon. You're not the right person.
She
to
didn't
be
realize. I
preaching.
don't know if she realized it or not, though. That's debatable, but I mean, she was.
I
She was.
just
I'm not
kind
saying she
of
wasn't,
hate
but
the fact
but I'm curious of whether or not she was realizing she was. But we'll get to that in a second.
I don't think she fully did, but still, it's like
Fully grasped it.
that problem exists throughout the series.
Yep. That, the fight scene or the argument between Wanda and Vision was fucking so good.
This is the because you got to keep in mind, I watched this as a binge, and it kind of all melds together.
Yep.
This specific fight scene was the fight. Is it the talk about she just asked to reset her lines or whatever with
Yes.
Agnes?
This was the same episode, but before, yeah.
Okay, that's the one you're referring to, though, right? Because there's another one that happened. I don't think it's in this episode.
No, it's the one where they're floating in the air, and he's like, "What's outside of Westview?"
Yeah.
So
He
no, I
snaps
was
at her.
thinking of like
He's like,
when
you don't want. He's like, "What's outside of Westview?" She is like, "I don't want you. You don't want to know. I promise you." And he goes, "You don't get to decide that for me."
Yeah, well, I mean, this wouldn't have been. It wouldn't have the weight of the scene. I love the actual scene where he's in the kitchen with the dog and they're all discussing this, and this happens before that, right?
It's the end part. So like he comes back at the end and says like it's very unusual to get a dog and bury it in the same day. And
No, like when the dog is in the fucking sink and they're cleaning it, and he comes out and he's like, he's talking to her, and he gets like visibly confused as to what the fuck is going on.
yes, and then the end of that episode, he's like you can't. He goes, I free normed of his control of your control over him, and you can't control this anymore. And she goes, can't I? And then she rolls the credits, and then they go into the living room and they argue with each other, which was just.
That was my favorite scene in this.
So
like Paul Bettany is absolutely incredible in this show. I mean, Elizabeth Olsen is.
And then on top of all that shit, fucking Quicksilver's back, Pietro, and of
There's
course,
the other Quicksilver. It's not the one from Sokovia.
of course they get Evan Peters to come back. Of course they do.
Well, they got all the money in the world, so of course. But like, I kind of hate where they go with this.
Oh, it was a big fucking troll job. Let's just be
yeah.
very real here. So, for those of you who don't know what we're referring to, by this time, Disney had officially acquired Fox Studios, which gave them, of course, the rights back to many other Marvel franchises for films that they didn't have previously when they started the MCU, specifically Deadpool, Fantastic Four, and the X-Men. In the X-Men that Fox produced, the Fox Studios produced, their version of the X-Men, they did have Quicksilver, which is Pietro Maximoff, played by Evan Peters in like Days of Future Past and all the other ones. And so when he shows up in this show as Pietro, I don't give a shit. Yours truly, I was like, you got to be fucking kidding me. They're gonna go like what?
That's the one thing I wasn't spoiled on. To be honest.
Please stand
And
up.
I was like, yeah, I was like, oh shit. But still, like, I mean, there's, this is like another. Like, I don't want to get. It happened already. Like, you know, when they show her look at Vision, and it shows his like deflated head from him being dead.
Yeah.
This is why I almost kind of wish they went with the idea and like committed to the idea of like
She stole
getting
the
his
body.
body back and that, because it has much more like it's much
Weight
more
to it.
fucked up, to be honest.
It is, and
Yeah.
and you know it's funny. I mean, at this point, it's heavily assumed between the the Vision, lack of a better word, and that fight where he says, "I can't remember my life before Westview. I'm scared," and it's just like, ooh, like,
Yeah, like Vision is like they so fucked up what happens
is.
to him in the show, to be honest.
But Heather, your thoughts on this? I mean, this was a heavy episode. I don't know.
This
obviously-
was the episode where it reveals that everybody she has encapsulated in this town is actually feeling her grief and her pain.
Yeah,
And
this is the
real
first time we're
them
getting
are
confirmation
absolutely
of
completely terrified.
yeah.
Got
Yeah, this is
So for me, this was the moment where it's like, now I get it. Now I can understand and like this show.
yeah. She's a monster, and it's even like added on. Is this the time when, like, just like I can't fuck. I'm gonna like mix up the timeline when this happens, but like, it's also revealed that like people are forcibly not able to see their kids, keeping their kids in rooms and stuff. And I remember they're like, "Why aren't there any kids here?" And all of a sudden, there's
Yes,
kids here.
this
This
is
is
the-
the Halloween one, right?
Because he's floating and he's like, "There's a
Yeah.
playground. I pass by it every day to work. Why are there no other children in Westview?"
And that is so fucked. I get it. Like she wants to keep like they're part of Westview, but she wants to like keep them locked up
Yeah.
to keep them safe, I guess. But it's so like she is such a fucking villain in this show that nobody will ever convince me otherwise. I don't care.
Which
Like
is-
at the end, she is still 1000% a villain.
Yeah, I mean, which is interesting because obviously the Scarlet Witch Wanda, in the Scarlet Witch character is that she is very divisive in that sense, in the sense of like she's been an X-Men, she's been a Avenger, but she's also been a villain, a very fucking powerful villain at that too. But Bobbit, your thoughts on this one? This is a pretty fucking heavy episode.
Oh yeah, like I really enjoyed this episode, and like leading up to their fight, I love how like throughout the whole series so far, anytime Vision's brought up, hey, this doesn't make sense. All of a sudden, the fucking screen will just reset, and all of a sudden he'll just forget everything. I like that little detail too. Like she's trying to get him to forget that shit.
It did
He's setting
push-
the
To
narrative.
me,
it did push the narrative
Yeah.
enough without giving away every single thing. So I think that was a smart move in the sense of like you're giving away just enough to kind of carry the audience a little bit longer, and then obviously we're gonna get the blow off in episode 8, and then ultimately
You know
the
when
big-
that happened in the first or second episode, I was like, did I fucking miss something? I really had to look at
Um,
the timeline of Disney Plus to be like, what? Because it just skipped back. It
Yep.
didn't do any rewinds out. It just skipped back.
Oh, you meant
It was
we were
great.
watching the stream? Like, did I just glitch something?
Yeah,
yeah.
it fucked me up, man.
By the way, whoops, I just had my notes here. This episode featured a commercial for Lagos paper towels. Did anybody catch that reference?
I did.
I did not.
Lagos was the city where Wanda killed Crossbones at the beginning of Civil War.
Oh yeah, I'm never gonna remember that.
oh,
Yep. So another thing too.
There's also like blood, like fucking liquid that they were sucking up with
It was
those
something
towels.
like there was a tagline for it that says like, when you want to fix your problems, something along like fixing problems or like that you didn't cause, or like accidents happen or some shit like that, where it's like,
I think it was accidents happen or
yeah,
something along
it's like,
those
wow, fucking shit hit on the nose on that one. So, moving on to episode 6, we get to all a new Halloween spooktacular. In a late 1990s, early 2000s settings, Maximoff wants to spend Tommy and Billy's first Halloween together as a family, but Vision tells her that he's going on patrol to patrol the streets with the neighborhood watch. Pietro offers to step in as the father figure and takes the boys trick-or-treating, of course, all in very comic-accurate outfits, which I thought was a little bit funny, causing mischief with his super speed, which Tommy is revealed to have inherited. Again, Tommy in the comics eventually becomes Speed, which is one of the young Avengers. Meanwhile, Vision explores further away from their house and finds resident of Westview standing frozen in their positions, including Agnes. Vision's able to speak to Agnes's real self, and she tells him that he is dead. Outside of Westview, Hayward orders Maria Rambeau, Darcy Lewis, and Jimmy Woo to leave the base for disagreeing with his decision to attack Wanda, but they instead sneak inside and hack into his computer to discover that he's been tracking Vision's vibranium signature inside of the Westview anomaly. Vision tries to push through the static wall, but he begins to disintegrate. Billy senses this and tells Wanda, who then expands the hexagonal static wall. Vision, Lewis, and several sword agents are now enveloped by the new boundary. Again, just when you think shit can't hit the fan.
Hey, you know what this reminds me of? Yeah, remember the episode of Rick and Morty where they go to the my man.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
like,
I know what you're talking about.
the bigger it gets, the more fucked up it gets because you can't maintain it all. Yeah. It's so good. But other than that, I mean, this is never. There's a line that I think was the episode before Rambo says, where it's like, she's enslaved thousands. It could have been more. Stop fucking making excuses. She's terrible. Like, I don't know why. Like, this is why I severely dislike Rambo's character.
Well, if you
in
have
this.
someone who has the powers of Wanda, right? Do you really think the smartest thing to do is to continue to piss her off?
No, but treat her like she's the good guy. No.
Well, they didn't know
Well,
what the hell was
she
going on.
understands the grief that Monica's going through because she just lost her mother, and she wasn't there when her mother died, so she's dealing with that grief.
On top of
Like Wanda's dealing with the grief of losing Vision.
on top of that, think of what Maria has experienced with superhero beings in Captain Marvel. I know Baseman didn't see it, but she was introduced to like unknown people and wants to give them the benefit of the doubt before assuming, because Skrulls were considered that way to be the bad guy, and then once she actually got to know them, they turned out to be actually good people. So it's probably just
the writing's on the wall here. Come on. Like, she enslaved a bunch of people for fucking months. Like nope.
She could have sat there and killed them all instead.
So
but that doesn't justify what she did.
Couple things to note.
So I could have shot you, but I just broke your legs.
Couple things to
So
note.
I'm a good guy.
A couple things to note. I do love the Malcolm in the Middle reference as far as the intro.
Yeah, that was great.
I do like
And they go right into Modern Family.
yeah, they go right into
that's
Modern
the next
Family in the
one,
next
yeah.
one. So the creepiness of what Baseman said of Vision kind of exploring everything, and then seeing that like how like there's less activity and people are just frozen in space.
He sees that woman.
It is haunting, and it's really
He sees that woman putting up clothespins, and it's just like a tear going down her face.
Yep.
Yeah.
She is terrible. Let's be real.
Hey, basically everyone except for Jimmy Woo in Sword sucks. Every single one of them. But
he's FBI.
He's FBI. He's not in Sword.
okay, FBI even better.
I guess
So
everybody
in Sword
but
sucks.
Rambo in Sword sucks, even
So-
though I fucking hate her too.
I don't understand this, but like I don't understand why Hayward would say like take the I don't know, just that doesn't.
It doesn't make any
No.
sense.
But I also do like
It's
the
like,
fact that like you now
We know
have,
Superman can't be hurt,
You-
so take the shot.
Yep, take the shot. I do like the idea that it's kind of like, oh, he's not just doing this for one reason. He's doing this for a sneaky, personal, selfish reason. And again, like Baseman mentioned, the scene where Vision's pushing himself. Fucking Paul Bettany once again, fucking crushing it in that role.
Yeah, I mean, this was this is, like I said, this is my scene for being introduced to everybody else. It should have been the scene. And it loses weight. Like honestly, they do him dirty in this show from here on out. Until the scenes where he's with Wanda. But every scene where he's alone, they do him dirty, man, because it's like it should have emotional weight, and it's like, oh, we stripped that from you earlier for Rambo. Great. And we'll strip it from you later because of Kat Dennings. Great. Like I hate that, man, because he's obviously he's fucking killing it, man.
Yeah,
I hate when you see that. But yeah, that was a great scene. And Kat Dennings standing up for him is kind of like weird, but I guess it makes sense. Also, he's falling apart. Save him! He's falling apart.
And by the way, the visual representation of like him being like sucked back into the Nexus is also eerily similar to the House of M like illustrations, which is another reason why people are like, "Oh, it's House of M, it's House of M, it's House of M." But Bobbit, what'd you think of this episode? We had a lot of craziness going on. The Halloween theme, Vision getting sucked back in.
It's not even just that. The heart-to-heart she had with Pietro while the boys went off on their own to go trick-or-treating.
Oh, yeah, he turns into a corpse.
Yeah.
Yeah, yep.
Yeah, it's just this whole scene, this whole episode for me was just that cementing of, yeah, there's no Mephisto. This is all Wanda.
So, for those of you who also didn't catch this at the time, there was a lot of heavy internet speculation that Mephisto would be making his debut into the MCU and that he would be the one either manipulating Wanda or really being the true big bad villain of this one, which the internet kind of went a little crazy with. And spoilers ahead, it wasn't Mephisto. Not that we won't still get Mephisto in the MCU, but it's not Mephisto. So if you see jokes about that in the future.
Sorry, Bobby, I know you're trying to say something.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, Bobbit.
No, I was just going to get my thoughts of this episode. I really liked it. I love Vision's character, and I swear to God, the commercial in the next episode had me dying laughing for 30 minutes straight.
Commercial for the next episode. Oh yeah. The other thing I did want. Yeah. The
fucking side effects.
We'll get to that one. The other thing I did note was I did love when Pietro and Wanda were talking. There was two particular lines that made me chuckle. The first was, of course, "Where's your accent? Where's yours?" It's like, yeah, she lost it. The second is, it's not like your dead husband can die twice. And her shooting him off like that. So it was interesting because even she, you could tell, was trying to like figure out like
where the fuck did Pietro come from?
First of all, were they married?
Not legally.
And were they together for more than 3 weeks?
Who?
Vision and Wanda.
So it's implied in this that they were together for a while, like since the events of Avengers Endgame and then Civil War, or excuse me, Age of Ultron and Civil War. I think. Methinks. Anyway, moving on to episode.
They've been together for at least a year and a half, maybe more.
Yeah. Strong enough bond to basically be married, right?
Mind
or like,
is,
you know.
That Mind Stone can do some freaky shit. Episode 7 is breaking the fourth wall. Excuse me. We're now in a mid to late 2000s settings as Maximoff decides to have a day to herself, and Agnes agrees to babysit Tommy and Billy. Maximoff sees various parts of her house constantly changing and is unable to control them. Vision wakes up to find the sword agents inside the Boundary are now members of a circus, and he releases Darcy from the spell, and she tells Vision about his death and the events that led to the current situation. Outside of Westview, Maria Rambeau and Jimmy Woo meet with loyal sword personnel and obtain a vehicle designed to, of course, cross the barrier. But when the tactic proves unsuccessful, Maria decides to enter in herself, despite warnings that it could alter her DNA, and not sure what the hell's going to happen to her. She passes through the static wall and emerges with seemingly heightened vision, no pun intended. Maria confronts Wanda again, but Agnes tells Maria Rambeau to leave and takes Wanda to her house. Wanda looks for the boys in the basement and discovers a bizarre, strange lair. Agnes introduces herself as a witch named Agatha Harkness and reveals that she has been disrupting Maximoff's lives, including sending an imposter Pietro and killing Sparky, much to a very catchy tune of "It Was Agatha All Along."
Yeah.
That
So
shit
many
blew up
questions.
so much. That song, so much, and rightfully so. It's so fucking catchy. So
This is where it sunk its teeth into me and would not let go. This episode, because it's like, finally, my fucking god.
there is only one thing. Okay, there's one thing I'm a little iffy about.
There's
And
a couple
I
things.
think me and Basement are on the same page.
Yeah, I'm almost guaranteeing it 100%. Go
Photon
ahead.
is born.
Oh, what? Who the fuck is
In
Photon?
the comics, Maria Rambeau is.
Oh yeah,
Photon.
this is one of the two things, but this is one of the major things because it's stupid as fuck.
So
It doesn't make any sense.
No. Well, hear me out. So, Captain Marvel was her powers were generated from an Infinity Stone, right?
Mm-hmm.
So was Wanda's, essentially, is heightened.
Mhm.
And we really don't know the effects of chaos magic per se. Even when we get to Doctor Strange, we don't really know the full effects of chaos magic. Hell, even in the show, we don't know the full effects of chaos magic at the end. So I can sort of buy it.
Well, I
But-
can't buy how the car, the $1 million fucking NASA vehicle, couldn't get through, but you can just walk through.
So there's a couple of theories, but that's a whole nother video for another day.
I mean, they do say it's like it's fighting against its mass or something like that.
But
Like if a car with the horsepower it has can't get through, how can?
But here's the problem that I have with it, and
Much
there's
power
an easy
for
with Maria, and there's a lazy way to explain it. But at first I'm like, oh yeah, she passes through this, the barrier, and she gets this change. But if that's the case, how many people
Yeah,
technically went through the barrier when
I mean, I think it's a back and forth that she did. I'm gonna say that
well, I was
because
gonna
they're
say
like
it's
it's
one of
changing
two
your
things.
DNA. You've
It's
gone
one of
through
two
it like
things.
multiple times.
It's either the fact that she went through a second time, or she's a mutant.
Yeah, and it's just like an ability that was like brought to life. Brought to life by that. I mean, the mutant thing makes a bit more sense for me. I just like I fucking hate her character, to be honest.
Well, I guess you
At
can't
this
wait
point-
to watch
at
the
this
Marvels
point-
then.
At this point, she disappears, and she's no longer a character of any worth. Yeah, except for like one scene later, that's stupid as shit. But yeah, it's like her character doesn't really.
Who blocks a bullet like that?
First of all, her character doesn't really make a lot of logical sense. Like, I could not imagine a person to be her unless they were at an IQ of 17.
Well, so the reveal of Agatha Harkness, I think a lot of people saw coming a mile away.
I'm not familiar with the character, but I knew it was going to happen anyway because I was
Spoilers.
spoiled.
Yep.
But I enjoyed it.
Honestly, I was not expecting her to be Agatha, but the fact that it was her, she's like, oh god, so perfect.
Yeah,
so
I mean,
perfect.
Catherine Hahn is a phenomenal actress, and so to have her be the essentially the villain in essence, even though she was
Wanda's the villain.
she's a sub villain in a way.
Yeah. Well, I mean, she's worse. But why is she there? Has she been following
she's there to
fucking
take,
Wanda?
No, she's there to take Wanda's
She's there
powers.
because she was following the magic.
Yeah.
Okay.
she-
So I was just like curious as to like how she ended up in this scenario.
She explains in the next episode, which we'll get to, that she's like, you did all this, and it's like, this is fucking
Unheard of.
unreal. I need to know how you're doing this so I can take your power.
The worst part of this episode and one of the worst parts of the show happens when Paul Bettany as Vision and Kat Dennings are driving, and she just glosses over, which should be a very big emotional moment for a character that doesn't know why they're there.
Well,
It's played off as like a joke.
I don't think so. I respectfully disagree. I think that, like, yes, they gloss over a shit ton of stuff because they kind of have to. But the thing,
Have to. Well, what do they
Well,
have to?
I mean, not everything. I'm saying is that the big part of, like, yeah, there was a little bit of jokiness to it. I'll give you, I give you that. But like
The whole like barricade and kids walking by, everything was
yeah,
the emotional weight of that scene was cut off by the fucking tomfoolery in front of
yeah,
it.
but the idea that, like, yeah, the tomfoolery was sprinkled too much in there. I'll give you that much. But he took away the weight of the brevity of, like, oh my God, Wanda went through some fucking shit. And really, when you sit down, the one thing I will say about this show is that it made me, like, sit back and go, like, holy fuck, she did go, like, she has the worst PTSD than any other Avenger I could possibly think of.
Well, I mean, the reason I don't love it. I like this show as the best thing in Phase 4 is because of the way they eventually handle that, and they're gearing up to it. I didn't like the fact that they kind of like this is when I say when they did Paul Bettany a bit dirty, because he obviously proved that he can fucking handle it acting wise, and I just Kat Dennings and him, I didn't get it. It wasn't it's passed off as something that's like, if your whole fucking thing was like, what's happening to me and who am I, and it's like, well, you were killed by Ultron and then you were brought back and killed again, so I died twice. That's it.
Yeah, I mean, again, they had to, like, I get why they had to, like, condense
I
it.
actually feel like this show would be better without fucking Rambo in it, because they could have spent more time on the things that mattered.
Plus, I think they
She
had to,
doesn't
like,
matter
figure
in
out-
the end at all.
They had to explain why Maria, or how Maria got her powers. The other thing I wanted to note is that they did have a commercial, like Bobbitt was mentioning earlier, for Nexus antidepressants. And the reason that that's a little bit of a wink and nod is because in the comics, Wanda is considered to be a Nexus level being, which is a being that is immensely powerful, similar to along the lines of, like, the Phoenix and Magneto and characters that have powers that are so high scale and so through the roof that they can do all sorts of crazy, insane shit. So when it's like, oh, Nexus, interesting.
Side effects might include depression.
Yeah, basically, loss of loved ones. I'm like, what the fuck? So yeah, I agree with Bob. That
Cure
was funny
depression,
shit.
you cure
Bob,
depression.
what'd you think of this
Great.
episode with the reveal of Agatha? It was Agatha all along. Did you think the song was catchy?
Yeah, I really like that song, and this was kind of spoiled for me because of the whole Phase 5 lineup, and I was like, oh, okay. And but yeah, her as Agatha, I think she's gonna be a damn good fit for that role.
Mm-hmm.
And I agree with the basement. Paul Bettany did get kind of shafted here, especially with Kat Dennings. And overall, I just liked it. And also, more depression.
Yeah, more depression from antidepressants.
I gotta say, like, the best part of that whole fucking thing with Agatha, she's just like, yes, and I killed Sparky.
And I killed Sparky too. Is the last line. And she does the
I
evil witch's cackle.
actually fucking laughed at that.
And I killed Sparky too. Yeah,
Like, oh my god,
great.
you fucking bitch.
Heather, you said that this was the episode that, like, sunk its teeth into you. Like, and you're talking about, like, this, like, okay, finally, now I'm invested. Is that what you kind of mean?
Yes.
Okay.
Now we got the true villain
Yep.
for this show, and you can, and looking back through that song, how she was involved in everything that went wrong. She's like, fucking hell. Now it makes sense.
Yep.
Then you get the walkthrough of Wanda's past life.
Exactly. In episode 8, which is previously on, we get not only Wanda's life, but we get a little bit of Agatha's as well, as we are cut to Salem in 1693. A coven of witches led by Harkness's mother, Evanora, which I didn't even know was her name, attempted to execute Harkness for practicing dark magic, but she drains their life forces. We're cut to present time, where Agatha demands to know how Wanda is controlling Westview and forces Wanda to relieve relieve herself, to relive key memories. Harkness learns that Wanda has had magical abilities since she was a child, which were then amplified by the Mind Stone as she was always enjoying sitcoms. After the blip, Wanda visited Sword to recover Vision's body, but Hayward refused to let her bury him. Unable to feel any life in Vision whatsoever, she drove to a lot in Westview that he had bought for her before his death so they could live there together. And of course, in a fit of rage and grief, she's able to manifest a house on the lot and a new version of Vision and extend the hex across the entire town. Harkness concludes that Maximoff possesses a legendary form called chaos magic and of course dubs her as the Scarlett Witch. In the mid-credit scene, we also see that Hayward is able to finally have reassembled the Vision pieces and creates a now all-white version of Vision assembled with his original body. So, this is the penultimate episode, and this is where finally everything is pretty much laid out. We know everything from beginning to end. We know where things left off from Endgame. And more importantly, we get the single greatest written line in this entire fucking show. No takers? Basement?
I don't know if it's the greatest line written in the show. I think the greatest line happens in the finale. But
What is grief but love persevering?
oh yeah, no, never mind. That's the line I'm thinking of.
What did you think it was?
I thought it happened. No, I thought it happened in the finale for some reason.
No. It was when she would go back in time. I do like that, and again, for context purposes, when Marvel did not own the rights to the mutants, one of the things that they, two characters that were kind of in limbo was Pietro and Wanda Maximoff because they are both Avengers and X-Men. So basically the X-Men, or Fox at the time, let them use Wanda and Pietro so long as they didn't refer to her as a mutant or the Scarlet Witch. And so what this did was it sort of kind of rewrote her backstory a little bit, but now that Disney/Marvel owns the rights to all those franchises, they can now officially call her the Scarlet Witch because that's what she is. I personally really like her. I like the origin story that they gave her, where it's like
I think this might be my favorite episode of the show.
Yep.
Yeah, it explains the sitcoms obviously, and it to me, I don't want to say perfectly, but as close to perfectly ties everything up to this point as much as humanly possible.
Well, I looked at like some things online and people are like, "Oh, okay, she lost the Vision, so she goes berserk." Man, she lost everything. Like
She lost her parents, her
lost
brother,
her country for the most part. Like Jesus Christ, lost her brother, lost her parents, lost her country, lost her first lover, I guess after that. And I mean, if that doesn't drive you crazy, what the fuck would? Let's be real. And I mean,
it turns her a little sympathetic. If not,
even though
very
she's doing
sympathetic.
something terrible, you can like empathize with her or sympathize with her, I guess is the
Also, the
better
fact
term.
that she was very young when her parents were taken from her, so she never was really taught how to properly grieve.
Yeah, but she was fucking militarized, right? Or like, radicalized. Because they
Yes.
were part of that radical group. And
Yep.
her life is terrible, is all I'm gonna say. And like, I mean, it doesn't give her an excuse for what she does, but like, at least she kind of played on it. I mean, when I say like she's the bad guy, I need to say that because I hate the way that they treat the end of the show. But this episode was fucking great. It has the backstory is great. I love the way they do it with Agatha Harkness like walking her through doors of her past.
Yes, I did love the narrative that they were doing to cast everything through. I think that was also very clever because it ties into what Agatha's purpose is. Agatha's there she wants the powers that the Scarlet Witch has with chaos magic and realizes it's like, man, there's just shit fucking leagues above whatever I said. And she's trying to like figure out how the fuck this happened so she can maybe tap into that power. So it is, yeah, I'd say this is my favorite episode.
I do feel like the biggest nagging question I had throughout this whole show, like why sitcoms, why this, why that, it is answered here, and it's answered enough for me to accept it.
Yep.
which is good on them for doing. I know it's just like they give it more than just like a 2-second scene. They give it like the family nestling down to watch this. The bomb goes off, and
They
I
let you
mean,
breathe.
yeah, it kind of lets it settle in
Yeah.
instead of it just being like, yeah, they used to like movies and this is why, or TV shows and this is why. It's more like the experience of the family that after that it never happened.
There was
And
also
it even shows later that she's watching newer sitcoms. I don't know if this is this episode or the next one, but she is watching newer sitcoms. So
That's this
that
one.
kind of like her love of sitcoms kind of like sticks with her as like I guess memory of her family or whatever. So like I mean I can't hate that they did it because they do tie it in, and I'm still on the fence whether I'd rather it be this way or the other. This way has a lot more style. I'll give them that.
The other subtle thing, before I throw it to Heather real quick, the other subtle thing that I personally liked about the way they explored Wanda's past, if you notice, no one spoke during the moment. Like, yeah, Agatha and Wanda would talk after the event happened, but they let the scene play itself, which I thought was huge. And I don't think that's as appreciated as much. You know what I mean?
I mean, this is a good sign for anything that they'll do with the X-Men, because the X-Men, there's a lot of tragedy in that story, and they need to let like they need to let like a scene's action speak for itself instead of like over
Telling us
narrating or taking over. I mean, your audience isn't dumb. Like, we're not 3 years old, and nobody's watching this at 3 years old.
Yeah.
So let like this just fucking don't tell us, show us. And like I said that before when we were talking about Endgame, and Frank was on and we're talking about the whole scene with Hawkeye and Black Widow, and I'm like, it would have had more weight if they showed us that relationship instead of told us that relationship. And that's just the honest God's truth for anything you're ever going to see on film.
So Heather, what do you think about this episode?
This was one of the better episodes, again, because of the fact that it's explaining everything for us and answering questions that we had from the very fucking beginning of this fucking series. But I also love that this shows, because this harkens back to like episode 3, where Harlow shows the doctored video of Wanda destroying the lab and kidnapping Vision's body.
Yes, that's right.
Versus what actually happened at that time, where she went up and spoke with him directly.
Hayward lied to everybody and said that Wanda stole Vision's body when that's actually not the case.
I mean, they're doing their best to make her not the villain.
Yeah.
But I also agree with you. I love that scene too.
It gets more towards her sympathizing her and pushing it more towards Agatha is actually the evil one.
Well, I love the fact that like a broken mind can do terrible things.
Right.
Yep.
Which is why I fucking love the depth of this show versus everything else I've seen in Phase 4.
Bobbit, what do you think of that?
I still say Turtles is better than this.
Oh, I haven't seen it yet.
Well, we'll get there. Bobbit, what do you think of this one? This episode?
This is probably my favorite one because of the whole backstory of Wanda and Pietro. And like when they were sitting down watching the Dick Van Dyke show and the bomb went off, that legitimately scared me because I didn't expect that to happen.
That was done very well, I will say.
Yeah. I love, and like you said, Basement, I love how they just let it play out. They didn't try to explain shit to us because we could see what's going on without them telling us what's going on.
Right.
And I think this had the best storytelling out of all the episodes leading up to this so far.
Hey, correct me if I'm wrong, but we've already been alluded to the fact that why they were radicalized. Oh, it was Stark Industries. This is why they hated Stark, because the Stark bomb landed and never went off.
Yep.
And this kind of changes that to be like, you stopped it from going off. It wasn't defective, and that's still kind of up in the air.
Yes.
But I love leaving it ambiguous.
Yep.
They
Personally-
wove in between where they had to like limit themselves because of the whole Scarlet Witch, trademark shit and all that. Whoever wrote that was like fucking. I gotta give them props for that.
Yeah, I mean the thing is, the writing in this show is it goes between me not liking it and me loving it.
There's no, yeah.
Like, and I can't say that for any other thing that happened in Phase 4. I don't love the writing in
man.
anything else in Phase 4. Falcon and Winter Soldier, too on the nose and too low hanging fruit.
We'll get
This
there.
was about grief, and they do grief pretty as good as I can expect for Marvel.
Mm-hmm. So finally, we get to the series finale, the final, literally the episode's called series finale. So Agatha Harkness attempts to take Wanda Maximoff's chaos magic, but is interrupted by the white, reassembled, and reanimated Vision, who attacks Wanda, revealing Sword director Tyler Hayward's orders to eliminate her. He is, of course, foiled by the version of Vision, say that 3 times fast, created by Wanda, who fights with White Vision across Westview while Harkness continues to attack Wanda. Excuse me. Agatha frees the residents of Westview from Maximoff's spell that's trapped them in the sitcom personas, and they plead with Wanda to let them leave. Wanda begins to open the barrier to allow the residents to escape, but her Vision and their sons, Billy and Tommy, begin to disintegrate right in front of her. She closes the barrier again, but not before Hayward enters in with multiple Sword personnel. Monica Rambeau removes a magical necklace from Pietro Maximoff, releasing him from Agatha's control and revealing his true identity as Ralph Boner. Wanda attempts to overpower Agatha with illusions of her past, but Harkness gains control and overpowers Wanda. Using her newly developed powers, Maria saves Billy and Tommy from Hayward, who is, of course, detained by Darcy Lewis. Again, who the fuck blocks a bullet this way? Whatever. Wanda, she didn't even know she could do it that way. That's the other part that just baffles me.
Like, fuck.
Wanda's vision helps unlock the White Vision's memories and later departs Westview altogether. Agatha takes Maximoff's magic but does not realize that Maximoff has created magical runes around the barrier to prevent Agatha from using her own magic. Wanda then reclaims all of her magic, becomes the Scarlet Witch, and traps Agatha as the sitcom persona Agnes and takes her family home as she collapses the barrier. Wanda and Vision puts their sons to bed and say goodbye before Vision, the boys, and the house all disappear. Faced with the Westview residents that she has harmed, Wanda makes peace with Maria Rambeau and goes into hiding. We'll save the mid and post-credit scenes for a second, but so this is the big fight. This is the big superhero fight for everything.
I finally heard the Boston come out.
Yeah, I know, right?
The barrier.
The barrier. Slips out every once in a while.
Whatever. There's no problem with that.
The fight sequences with Visions actually were my favorites, but compared to Wanda versus Agatha. But I also did love Wanda coming with the self-realization of what the fuck she actually did. Now, I don't know if it was she was in denial or she legitimately didn't know what she was doing. But either way, the acting of it was just great.
She fucking kills it, to be honest. And she kills it in Doctor Strange too.
And Sparky.
Yeah. He was never real. Anyway.
I actually loved Vision versus Vision's fights for so many reasons. Specifically how their dialogue, and then of course the ship of Theseus philosophical debate, which was it was intriguing to me. I actually really liked that, where it's like they're trying to stump each other with a fucking paradox.
He hits him with like, what if they're both true?
It's
like, oh my god, malfunction.
but I will say that like a big question that a lot of people are asking now, because spoiler alert, we have not seen nor heard nor hair nor hide of White Vision since this.
This is kind of what like angered me in this, because he kind of like, from my understanding of the scene, he kind of like he becomes Vision.
Yes,
and he's like, all right, I must leave this planet.
I must go. My planet needs me.
So I guess like what did he get from Vision? I guess he got none of his like emotional connection to anything
So,
or like connection to
the-
anything,
the-
just
the-
like knowledge
The
or
way I
something.
interpreted it was that the white Vision was basically just, it was Vision, just minus any emotions or memories. Now he has
Well,
the memories.
Isn't it Vision? Remember, like they're like, oh, we can. Like, what they were trying to do in Wakanda with Vision before Vision got killed.
Yeah, remove the Mind Stone from him.
Yeah, yeah. But if he gets memories and his answer is to fucking fly away
So
and then disappear forever,
my theory is that he's gonna go to Wakanda.
forever.
So maybe we'll see him in the new Black Panther movie. I don't know, but just saying this as of this recording, there has been no mention or no hint or no anything of White Vision since this came out last year.
I mean, can't they come up with a better name?
What?
I mean, White Vision. It's kind of like
It's all right. So
it's offending me.
Oh, by the way, I mentioned this earlier to I think I mentioned this before we got on the call, on the stream here.
Color.
One of the things that I loved was right before this a couple of weeks before this episode aired, Paul Bettany did an interview where he basically said, "Oh, I get to do this. I get to work with an actor who I've always wanted to work with before. He's a treasure. He's a class act." Which of course again sent the internet into a tizzy and in a frenzy, thinking it's going to be a major cameo along the lines of Professor X or Magneto, because Magneto is in the comics, in one of the versions of the comics, Magneto was the father of Wanda. And it turns out just to be fucking Paul Bettany himself. Just
Whatever,
makes me
man, he
love Paul
deserves
Bettany
it.
that much more.
He deserves it.
Yeah.
I remember like the story of him wanted to fucking quit acting, and then he got this. So
yeah,
This also makes me. This basically turns Wanda into a sympathetic villain.
he is a sympathetic villain. I mean, though her villainy should not be like this is kind of why I hate the way this show ends. She just will let go.
She what?
She's just let go.
Oh, what of the people?
No, she just is
I'm
let
not-
go. She no government entities were like, well, maybe she shouldn't leave if she's unhinged and fucking enslaving people. Nope, go live in the mountains with a book.
We'll get there. What about you, Heather?
This episode did it for me. I liked Agatha and Wanda's fight more than Vision's fight. Just because it's so sporadic and all over the place, and it just ends with them talking. Just like
Well, both do.
that's kind of anticlimactic.
But it fits.
I'm glad of that because this shouldn't have ended with Skybeam
I think that
or any
fits
other it should have ended with talking, right?
because that's
In my mind,
they're both the same. But yeah, not different naturally.
I mean, she fucking turns her into a fucking Karen from next door, which is
That is basically what he does to Agatha. Yeah.
that's the worst thing you could have done to her character outside of killing her.
Personally, I'm a bit on the fence with what happens at the end of Wanda at this point before we get to see the end credit scene. Because on one hand, it's like, what did she really do? All she just did was take Agatha's powers or take her powers back and embraced herself as being the Scarlet Witch, which. Okay, she was kind of like denying it the last 2 episodes, like, I'm not a witch, I'm not this, blah, blah, blah. And then she embraces it. But it's just like, okay, so she's now no longer Wanda. She is the Scarlet Witch. She's embracing this like new identity, which, as you heard, Agatha mentioned that there's an entire chapter of her devoted into the Darkhold, which is the Book of the Damned, and says that her powers exceed even that of the Sorcerer Supreme. Nod, nod, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, Doctor Strange. But
Might as well cut his dick off right now. Because I can tell you that's what happened.
But spoilers. I don't know. Like on one hand, cool, she's embracing this, and we learn how much she's actually suffered through. I don't know. I feel like the Agatha Wanda fight was just like
I didn't like the
Eh?
last episode that much. I mean, I thought the eighth episode, or the eighth, right? The eighth episode was easily the best.
Laid everything out.
And I would actually put a couple of the earlier episodes above the last one. I hate. It's just like when it comes, like half of this fucking CGI fucking fighting in space, throwing fireballs at each other, and it's like boring to me. I enjoyed the conversations between the two, but the fight is like, how many times do we have to see fucking people laser
But
beaming each other?
it also showcased how fast of a learner Wanda is because of the fact that she threw up the runes in the sky, preventing Agatha from using her powers.
That I actually very much enjoyed because I was watching the fight and she's like throwing balls, fireballs, or fucking magic balls, and missing half the time because you know she's making those ruins, right?
Yep.
I actually enjoyed that twist on it. But like the fight scenes,
Clever girl.
they ain't great. Let's
Yeah. I mean,
especially with the fucking kids.
I like
the
the
fucking
Vision.
kids get into it. It
I like the
angers
Vision
me.
ones more than I like the Agatha, but
I thought the fighting between Vision and Vision is actually more intriguing because of the powers and the laser beam from the head and going inside of each other's body.
by the way, a lot of people also bitched and moaned. They're like, because there's a scene where White Vision gets behind the other Vision, tries to go for his Mind Stone. Basically, I know it's not the real thing, and he goes, "I know that," and he just phases through them, and everyone's like, "Why didn't he do that with fucking Thanos?"
Yeah.
To which I answer, don't forget he was still heavily damaged from whatever that thing he was pierced with at the beginning of Infinity War, so he couldn't like phase or change his appearance. But a lot of people, I was just laughing. A lot of people like
Thanos could have stopped anything he was gonna do with the fucking Infinity Gauntlet.
But I just laughed because there was a meme going, you know, the Kevin Hart where he's like, and a lot of people are like, why did he do that with Thanos? But just a fun little joke. Bobby, what'd you think of the final episode here?
I didn't like it as much as it 8, and I'm curious to see where Agatha is going to have her. Like, well, we know that she returns in Phase 5, and I'm curious to see how they're going to do that based off of what happens here. And the White Vision fight I thought was pretty cool. I'm curious to see how White Vision's is going to fit into the whole MCU now, because he pretty much is fucked off at this point.
Yep, that's basically how to put it.
Another thing, you brought up the whole Vision going through White Vision and the whole Thanos thing.
Yep.
Isn't that because he did that because he wasn't really a human? He was more of a being that came from Wanda in this show.
I mean, we saw he could phase through walls and stuff like that, and basically make himself like
the argument was that during the fight, White Vision got behind regular Vision. It was attempting to remove it's not really the Mind Stone, but essentially his version of the Mind Stone because it's not real, but as his power source. That Vision phased through White Vision, and then the fight continued. And a lot of people online were like, what the fuck? Why didn't Vision, like the real Vision, do that when Thanos was going to take the Mind Stone out of him at the towards the end of Infinity War? But at the beginning of Infinity War, he was stabbed from members of the Black Order, which like prevented his phasing and stuff. Which is the only argument I can make because, listen,
I mean, I feel like there's the other side has no real argument considering he can turn back time a trillion times forever. Like eventually you're gonna get there. Dormammu, I challenge you.
Come to bargain.
So eventually, and he's also fucked up. So I don't think that's a huge nitpick for that.
I'm taking it as much as I can. So,
what about Rambo, the best character?
We're getting there. So in a mid-credit scene, Hayward is arrested while Maria Rambeau is informed by none other than a Skrull disguised as an FBI agent that a friend of her mother, Maria, wants to meet her up in space. So this is probably presuming that we're going to be leading to Secret Invasion, which will be coming out in Phase 5 very soon. Plus, we did see, Nick Fury up in a space outfit or a space station with Skrulls. And of course, the big one is the post-credit scene where we see that that Wanda Maximoff is off in a remote cabin far into the woods, seemingly just enjoying herself a good old cup of tea. But nope. she's actually in the back room practicing and reading through the entire Darkhold when she hears Billy and Tommy crying for her as the screen fades to black, ending WandaVision.
In what world is she not fucking taken into custody? In some way. Like, it just let her go? She fucking did terrible things.
Well, I mean,
And also,
how are
like,
they didn't have a way to like trace her.
They let her,
Yeah,
the
but
whole
basement-
fucking sword team let her walk back to her house.
Yeah, they were
To await
didn't
the
know where- they
death
didn't know
of
where that house
everybody
was.
else.
If they arrested her, she would have broken out anyway.
Yeah, they
I
really
know,
did-
but they also tried to fucking shoot her and kill her all the time in this fucking show, and to no avail. Obviously,
To be fair, they did detain her in Civil War at the end, so I mean, it's not like it's impossible. I don't fucking know.
I hate it's so it hurts the show because she should have been like, I would have preferred if she was detained and got a detainment for Doctor Strange instead of just being like, here I am with my orchids. Fuck that shit.
Well, I think
like,
the big reveal being like, oh, she's got the Darkhold now. It's like, oh, maybe she'll reform her ways. It's like, nope, she's fucking going completely off the deep end at this point.
Man, I would have preferred her being in like the thing is the character has suffered so much. You want to see like
Redemption.
No.
No.
In this show, I think she should have ended up suffering more. If they're gonna go where they go with her, no, you got to think about it.
No,
Where they go with her character makes more sense than her because like the end, everything that happens here when they don't hold her accountable for what she's done actually undermines the way. Like Gina said it, it's like, didn't she already go through that?
No, I get what you're saying. I'm just laughing at it. It's like, hear me out. She should suffer more.
Yeah, she's not real. Fuck it.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, so yes, they held her captive in Civil War. However, she was not as powerful as she is.
I was about to say there's that aspect to it too. Heather, what do you think of the post-credit scenes and future going into with this whole thing of, oh, now Wanda's got the Darkhold, so more shit's gonna hit the fan.
More shit's gonna hit the fan. She's gonna be even more fucked up, and that just leads us right into Doctor Strange 2.
Yep, which Daddy Feige confirmed. Another thing to note, and this is something that I think I talked a little bit about on No Bucks Given, and I didn't want to spoil too much before we got to this point, but remember we were talking basement about, or actually I think we were doing this off the air, about how we were going to introduce mutants and the X-Men in the MCU.
Mm-hmm.
The end scene where Wanda is walking through the Westview residence after everything happens and the looks that they gave her, that is what I think should have been a starting point. And that is where I think things should begin as far as the hatred towards powered beings or like mutants or stuff like that, because that's where I thought they were going to do with it. It's like, oh, they're planting seeds for mutant hatred with this going into the future. You know what I mean?
I mean, we're going to have to accept that they're not going to go back in time.
They can't.
They can do anything they want apparently, but like,
yeah, they can really do anything they want.
We'll see how it plays out, and we'll see how we think about it. What was the first? Is it just me, or does anybody else fucking hate? I fucking hate the Skrulls. Like, I don't care about that shit at all.
The Skrulls are underplayed.
A bunch of green people, great.
Well, the Skrulls have a very powerful ability in terms of the shape-shifting, but they are so far in the MCU heavily underplayed. There is a lot.
They seem so like Star Trek-y to me that I can't.
They're kind of not. I mean, if you had finished Captain Marvel, you would have gotten more of a sense of the Skrulls.
Yeah, that sentence I never thought I'd hear. If you finished Captain Marvel,
I can't do that. I'd rather go to jail for 20 years.
Can't say I blame you for sure. But anyway, that was WandaVision in its entirety. We covered the entire series. So,
what would you give it a 10?
What?
What would you give it a 10?
God damn it! You're reading my mind now. Fucking.
Sorry, I'm inside you.
Darkhold.
I'm gonna take myself out of you.
Too late.
Never too late. No. Put it back in. Ooh. Well, let me do me last, like I always do. I'm gonna throw it to Basement first, since he's so eager.
So are we like? How are we voting these? Because it's a show versus
the show in its entirety.
But are we like putting Marvel shows versus shows, or
Yeah,
Marvel
well,
shows
just do it the
versus
same-
movies.
It's just a ranking out of 10 just for fun anyway.
I know, but like, it's hard for me to compare it to a movie because it's fucking
Well,
10 times long.
yeah, but it's still like in this case, it's just, you know,
I
its
give
entirety.
WandaVision in its entirety a 7 out of 10. I enjoyed it. There's problems with it, and some of it's like an 8 for me, but it can't go there because the problems hold it back.
Yeah.
All right. Bobbit, I'll throw it to you this time. What would you rate WandaVision out of your 10-year overall thoughts on the show?
7.5, sorry. Go ahead.
I'm gonna agree with Basement. I'm gonna give it a 7 out of 10. I really enjoyed it. I love the little breadcrumbs that they put in throughout to lead you to what was actually going on the entire time. And I love how it just seamlessly connects into Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness.
All right, fair enough. Heather, I know you had strong feelings towards the beginning of it. How do you think it's
Because
like? What's that?
because the show took so long
Yep.
to actually be entertaining to me,
Mm-hmm.
I only go as high as a 5.5.
Middle of the road, okay. And it's just because it just took so long to get to the point.
It was so hard to sit through and watch all the way up to episode 8.
I only felt that for the first 2 episodes, and then after that, I kind of was able to watch it. Like I said, 7.5. The acting and the portrayal of grief is the only reason I'm giving this what it is. The show itself, but those two things escalated so much.
For me, the first thing I will say this right off the bat, I rewatched this because I'm a fuck.
You're a love ram.
Sure am. So I rewatched this because I wanted to look for different things this time, and I also wanted to experience it and see if it was going to be any different doing a binge watch versus when I watched it week to week. And like I said at the beginning, it's so much better binging it not one sitting per se, but like multiple, having all the episodes together as opposed to week to week. Week to week, it was a little challenging sometimes. There is a lot to like about this series, from like the acting side and certain effects, and there are certain things that I genuinely enjoyed about WandaVision, but there are some parts of it that I just feel like it's not horrible per se, but just didn't quite level up. And I'm not saying that necessarily that is the show's faults per se. I think, like I was mentioning before, the fact that this was the first big thing to come out from Marvel in a year, following the events roughly of Avengers Endgame. I know Spider-Man Far From Home, but still, for the point of semantics. On top of that, it's the first Disney Plus show. It's a longer one compared to the others. So there's a lot of unknown and uncertain elements to it. And like I said, another big part of it was the Mephisto buildup. A lot of people thought that Mephisto would be the built-up villain to this, and I think a primary reason, besides the the hints in the shows to the comic, was because they compared this to a Marvel movie. They compared this to like they were going to be a big bad, or there was going to be some sort of big grandiose epicness to it. That this wasn't. That's not what it was. This was supposed to be what Kevin Feige said it would be: a conduit to get you from here to Doctor Strange, to help you understand where Wanda's character's going. But it's not to take away that I thought there was still quite a lot to enjoy about it, specifically the acting. The acting was, I feel like, sometimes better than it needed to be.
It should be,
yeah.
For what was provided, script wise.
Elizabeth Olsen knocked it out of the park. Catherine Hahn knocked it out of the park. Jimmy
Bettany.
Woo. Who doesn't love Jimmy Woo? But to me, at the top of the list was Paul Bettany. I know this was about Wanda, but fuck, did in my opinion, Paul Bettany crushed this show. can't say enough positive things. I'm going to probably go in the middle of the ground here and say I'm going to give this a 6.5 out of 10, maybe a little bit closer to a 7, because to me the positives mostly outweigh the negatives for me in this one. So I go like kind of in between Basement and Heather in this. Just because, yeah, there are some things that kind of for me, but I think the other aspects of it were overshadowed it, in my opinion.
I gotta look at the ballsiness for going a direction that they did. Very different than anything else you're gonna see in the MCU for the most part, and where they go for it. It has its faults, but man, fuck the acting, the portrayal of grief that they do, and the fact that this might be the only thing in Phase 4 that is a bit more of an intimate viewing than the standard schlock they come out with.
Yeah. But that being said, that was WandaVision. I want to thank everybody for tuning in and listening to us ramble incoherently. I want to thank Bobbit, Heather, and Basement for joining us, and JP for the 2 seconds he was here. But any last minute thoughts before we wrap up this week's Marvel Roundtable?
I thought I was gonna hate this show.
I thought you were gonna hate it too, to be honest with you.
But I mean, the mystery. I ended up enjoying it, which is strange because I've hated fucking everything else. No, I haven't hated everything else. I actually enjoyed this show, and I think it has to do a lot with the fact I watched it when I watched it.
Yep.
Uh-huh.
Or Heather, I'm just keeping her up way too late. I'm sorry.
Oh, it's alright.
Bobbit, any last minute thoughts?
I want to say this before we go. Next is antidepressants. Side effects include feeling feelings and more
That
depression.
was it. Feeling feelings. That was it. I remember that now. That was my I forgot about that. That was fucking hilarious.
The last thing I want.
Yeah. Well, that's going to do it for this week's edition of this episode of the Marvel Roundtable. Join us next time right here on the Marvel Roundtable as we continue on to Phase 4 with yet another Disney Plus original show. But this time, only 6 episodes as opposed to 9. But this time, we're going to go in a completely different direction as we're going to catch up with Sam Wilson and Bucky Barnes and seeing how they're handling things following not only the events of Avengers Endgame, but a little bit of post-blip action and where the mantle of the Star-Spangled Warrior goes, and see what's going to happen to the mantle of Captain America in Falcon and the Winter Soldier.